Just a content warning for you guys, this episode will contain topics like depression and anxiety and mental health issues. If you might struggle listening to them, then just proceed with caution, or maybe don't listen and take a break if you need to.
Welcome to the Your Voice Matters podcast. I'm Az.
I'm Emily.
I'm Hudson.
I'm Matty.
I'm Sarah.
And this episode is going to be focused on mental health. So, what is mental health?
Mental health includes our emotional, psychological and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel and act. It helps us determine how we handle stress, relate to others and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through to adulthood.
So, most people have experienced bad and good mental health through their lives, and mental health is a constant thing. Typically in the media these days, you don't really hear people talking about mental health as like positives, because it's only really shown as like mental illnesses and things like those. But mental health is a constant thing, same as physical health.
Everybody has mental health.
Everyone has mental health, yeah. Some people's just
isn't as good as others.
Yeah, some people struggle sometimes, and mental health is always changing, same with physical, and people can get better, get worse. Just depends on them, I guess.
There are early warning signs to having like mental health issues such as depression, anxiety and eating disorders. For example, eating or sleeping too much or too little, pulling away from people and usually activities, or having low or no energy.
What is really mental health? So mental health is obviously your emotional state, your psychological well-being, and it can be affected by so many different things. And in the current kind of social age where everything is always connected, everyone is always connected to something, apart from me today because I've left my phone. People are easily affected by their surroundings and by other people and influenced in so many tiny ways, hence the term influencer. So it's so easy for us to be lost in this sense of like isolation that can trigger so much and get people to such a bad mental state, even when they're not in particularly traumatic situations.
One thing to always think about is that just because your mental health worsening doesn't mean something big has to happen in your life. It can be something from one of your family members dying tragically.
Or it can just be an imbalance in your brain.
Yeah. Chemical imbalance.
There really doesn't need to be a cause, and there's never such thing as you can't really tell yourself, I don't really have a reason to have a condition.
Well, mental health can be caused by a number of things, and to be honest, it's arguably you should arguably take care of it more than anything else you have. Well, such as
physical health.
Physical health, mental health can affect that.
Just health in general. Take care of your health, guys. Don't smoke. Carry on.
Well, if your mental health deteriorates, eventually, if it gets worse enough, your physical health is going to deteriorate. You're not going to go outside as much, and everything's just going to get worse. But the thing with your mental health is opposite to your physical health. Well, with your physical health, you hurt yourself, you go to the doctor, it gets better or it gets worse. With your mental health, if you don't talk to somebody, it's different, because if you don't talk to somebody, it gets worse and worse and worse, and it's a continuous cycle, continuous loop, unless you find a way out of it.
And talking to someone doesn't just mean talking to your friends. It means talking to someone who can get you help. There is no such thing as a cure for any mental condition. Well, you can get medication, but it's not like a be-all, end-all. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, there is no specific cure to a mental illness. You can get antidepressants and stuff, but therapy is always good. Might help. Therapy might hinder. It depends on your therapist, I guess. No hate to any therapists out there.
We love you guys.
So, what does mental health mean to you? If you want, on the comment section of the YouTube channel, you can write what actually it means to you as an individual. But to me, mental health is my constant state, my well-being, and things like my mood, and how I'm feeling and how I'm acting and treating the people around me. For me, I've suffered with various different things in the past, and I've been working on getting better with professionals and my friends, and even just myself. And things like self-improvement are things that I've found challenging throughout my life and have worked on for years, and I'm gradually starting to get better. Yay! Woo! Okay, what about you? What does mental health mean to you?
Mental health for me is something I can improve with things in my life. Like, I've never had any drastic conditions, but sometimes I just don't feel as happy as other times. And one way I try to improve my health is by drawing and by being more spiritual. So I'm Muslim, I might go to the mosque, I might read more Quran, and that really helps me out.
Similarly for me, when I started getting more in touch with things that I found interesting, I normally find that I can get a little bit better, but sometimes when it's getting really bad, then even things that I enjoy, so even like playing video games or even just watching TV, I lose the initiative and drive to do things that actually make me happy. And that is always a really stressful place to be in, because you want to get better and you want to try to improve your mood and you want to try and improve yourself, but trying sometimes isn't good enough because you've lost all the motivation, which is a really common symptom of depression, which we will be talking about later.
Well, the thing with mental health is you can say you don't have anything, but someone and anyone always has something going on, even if they say they don't. Like, they can hide it. And the most important thing that I've found is you need to talk out, because the longer you keep it in, like, just the longer it gets worse and the worse the feelings get. And yeah, that's pretty deep, but just do something that makes you happy, like a hobby, or watch something that makes you happy. You can say you're not going through anything, but at all times someone has something going on, even if they say they don't. Like, everyone's mental health matters, and it's kind of something that's ignored a bit in society. I mean, a lot more people are coming out about it now, but in years before, like before everyone, social media and that, it was a lot more of a, I don't know.
It was like, looked over. Yeah, and it was like,
it was more of like a
reaching out for help wasn't a good thing. It made you look weak.
I think the conversation around reaching out for help really helpfully links us to the interviewee for the day, who is
a GP from Coventry. She's written a few books on mental health, and we'll be cutting to an interview with Nikki right now. So now we start our interview segment, and we have our guest here. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hello, I'm Dr Afiniki Akanet. I'm a GP.
How do you think social media has affected your patients, as in worsening existing conditions or incorrect self-diagnosis or anything like that?
I think social media has affected a lot of people anyway, and patients are just regular people who also use social media. And I think the way that social media affects people is mainly perception, because it's something that we see. It's sometimes perceived to be more real than it is. So when it comes to mental health, I feel that young patients especially are being affected in that they believe that other people are doing much better than they are. Sometimes they have perspectives of health conditions that are not quite right. And there's been a lot of self-diagnosis as well, because we have from time to time diagnoses that become popular because somebody famous has mentioned that they have it, or somebody has talked about it, and then people start to worry that they have the same thing. Something like eating disorders, for example, people have the classic image in their head of somebody very skinny as the person that has an eating disorder, but eating disorder most of the time has nothing to do with people's BMI, weight versus height. It's more to do with their relationship with food and how it's affecting their mental health. So I do find that, yes, social media can affect people's perception of their health, but as with everything, moderation is good. Social media has its positives. It's great for promoting businesses. It's great for promoting health standards and good things that we want to promote. It's also good for social interaction, because not everybody has the opportunity to go out and see people, but it's just doing everything with moderation and realizing that, yes, some people are using filters and some people are portraying a life better than what it actually is.
Thank you. That was a very, very good answer, because I feel like that broke down a lot more than just like the surface level that most people tend to give for those kind of questions. So
yeah.
For the next question, what do you define as curing, in inverted commas, mental illness, if there is such a thing?
So for something to be called mental illness, I believe it has to be getting to a point where it's affecting your ability to function. It's being not helpful for your life and your well-being. It's stopping you from being productive and happy in your life. So if we're going to say that something has been cured, then it means that people are now being able to function, people are now being able to go back to their normal level of productivity and to live happy lives like they would expect to live. So if we use something like depression, for instance, everybody has their bad days where you just feel low, can't be bothered, you just don't want to do anything, don't want to see anyone. But that isn't clinical depression. It's only clinical depression when it gets to the point where it's genuinely stopping you from doing things. So you're not going to school anymore, you're not going to work, you're not able to even shower, get out of bed, get your food, so all the normal things, not able to look after your children or help with the chores at home or whatever it is that's normal for your life. Usually there's also a time element. So if it's carrying on for more than 2 weeks, that would then be a signal to get professional help, because it's not just a few bad days. So for someone to be saying that they're cured or they're better, I would expect that we're now getting to a point where they're able to do those things, they're able to function again, and they're able to manage things. And some people feel that their condition is more of an on and off thing, rather than I had depression in 2020 and it's better now and I'm okay now. I've seen patients that have had that and it was many years ago and they've not had it again. And then some people do genuinely have cycles of depression, sometimes even related to the weather, sometimes even related to things going on in their lives. So realizing that there are specific triggers that are not good for their mental health. So for somebody to be talking about being cured of mental illness, I think it's looking at the bigger picture of how they're relating with their environment and their functionality.
That was perfect. So,
So how do you think we support family and friends with like mental health problems or just with their mental health in general?
I think basically it's just being there for them if they're your friend or family, because obviously that's a different role to being a doctor or being their nurse or their teacher. So if you're their friend or family, the main thing would be to be there for them, because that's the thing that we professionals can't really do as much. So we would advise you and give treatments and point you in the right direction and manage things, and create a treatment plan, things like that. But then friends or family, I think the role really would be to be there for someone. So listen when they need someone to speak to, just pay attention to how they are, because the more you know someone, sometimes you don't even need for them to tell you that they're having a bad day. You can see it for yourself. And being there for them is also knowing their early warning signs. So some people you can kind of see when they're going downhill, and you can help them realize and just be like, you know what, I think things are getting not so good at the moment. Should we take a break? Should we go for a walk? Or do you want to take some time off? Things like that. So you're helping them to understand and manage their condition better. I think as friends and family as well, we can just be that shoulder for them to lean on when they're having really bad days that they can't function, as we've discussed already. So I think there's no point in being friends or family if I can't really ask you for help, because what's the point? Which is why sometimes the whole social media thing of having 1,000 friends, but then when you're feeling poorly and you need somebody to help you get some milk from the shop and you have no one to call, then you haven't really got friends, have you? So it's about being there for each other, being empathetic, being understanding, being able to practically help each other when people are struggling.
What steps should we take when we feel our own mental health worsens?
If you're already realizing that mental health is going downhill, so that's a good sign in that people have insight. So if I already start thinking, okay, this is not good for my mental health, I think the two main things are to check for any triggers, see if there's anything in particular that's causing it. So acknowledge the trigger and make adjustments if possible. So sometimes it's that something bad has happened and that's a normal reaction. You're just not coping because somebody's died or because you've lost something or you've been disappointed or betrayed. So that can have an impact on mental health. So acknowledging that something's happened, that's a trigger. And in some cases, some people have history of abuse, where certain things are triggers that take them back to that horrible place of things that they experienced in the past. Some people have been traumatized by things like wars. You probably would have seen people in your schools that have come from places that are war-torn at the moment. So people will have triggers that can be that can be difficult for their mental health. So realizing that that's going on, acknowledging it, because we can't just sweep things under the carpet and think, you know what, let me just think positive thoughts, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. It's important to acknowledge those things and just give yourself a chance to feel what you're feeling and make adjustments if possible. So if it's somebody or something or a situation that's making you feel bad, if you can make adjustments to avoid it or to change things or to fix things, then do that, because life doesn't just happen by chance. If something's bothering you, I always say, you can move. If you don't like where you are, move. So if something's affecting your mental health that bad, do something about it. And that's being proactive. So acknowledging and making adjustments. And in some cases, there's no specific trigger. It's just clinical. You're just not feeling yourself, or it's just reactive. You're just having a bad day. And I would say, yes, acknowledge also those feelings that, you know what, my mental health is not great today. Think about something that you might enjoy doing, concentrate on that. Distraction, speaking to someone about it is always helpful, because most times what we want to do when we're struggling with our mental health is to isolate and to just stay by ourselves. But the opposite is more helpful. So find someone to speak to. Yes, it's okay to have time to yourself, just to gather your thoughts, but wallowing in it is not very helpful. And finally, it's important to seek professional help if it's carrying on for too long.
Thank you for that answer. That was very in-depth. That's very helpful, because I think a lot of people would find that an answer very helpful, because it's telling everyone kind of what important steps you can take, and it's kind of showing alone. So we appreciate that. And now, for a prepped answer, what we define as mental health.
Right. So I was saying to you guys before the interview that this is the one thing I like to have a proper definition for, because I feel like most people describe it based on their own experience and based on what's going on at the time. But this is the best definition I've found. And fortunately, it's from the World Health Organization. So I'm just going to read it from their website. And it basically says that mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. It is an integral component of health and well-being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, build relationships, and shape the world we live in. So it's not just about feeling happy or having a good day or smiling and being able to post pictures on social media or go for a party. It's that whole picture of being able to cope with the stresses of life. So having good mental health is not just because everything's good, that's why I feel good. If my mental health is good, I can cope even when things are tough. I can work hard and be my best in my learning, in my work. I can contribute to society. And it's not just kind of one main aspect of health that's either there or not. It's all part of general well-being. So physical health, I always tell people, physical health, mental health, spiritual health are all connected. In fact, there is evidence to show that sometimes the physical health conditions that people are experiencing are because of problems with their mental health. So it's something called somatization, when your body starts showing symptoms because of physical health problems. And spirituality is also very important. Sometimes we like to ignore that because people like to feel that that's like an old people thing, having faith, going to church or praying, all that's old people thing. But I think spirituality is also connected to mental health and well-being. Looking after your physical health is also connected to mental health, in that when we look after our bodies, we have the energy. In fact, exercise releases endorphins that make us feel better in ourselves. And talking about young people and social media, when you look good, you feel good. So yes, looking after yourself, have that shower, brush your teeth, brush your hair, all that contributes to your mental well-being. So it is quite a big definition for mental health, but I like how the WHO have defined it there. It's a state of mental well-being that helps people to cope with all these things and to be able to learn and work well and contribute to their community.
For that, Nikki. So hopefully at the end, once you finish this, you can go down below to any of the links. We should have Nikki's website links, and she does have a few books if you would like to go read those.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the interview. It was really good. All of your answers were absolutely perfect.
Anxiety can be
So in this segment of the podcast, we're going to be talking about various different mental health issues that people have. So we're going to start with anxiety and depression, as they're like more commonly talked about. So I think they're probably easier things to talk about because they're quite common. Then we're going to be talking about eating disorders and personality disorders, which are two things that are very commonly like stigmatized, and there's a lot of misinformation spread about them and tend to have very negative kind of connotations in the world, even though they are most definitely not of the fault of the people who have them. So let's talk about anxiety.
Anxiety can be experienced in lots of different ways. If your experiences meet certain criteria, your doctor might diagnose you with a specific anxiety disorder.
So there's quite a few different types. So there's social anxiety, which is you can experience an extreme fear of anxiety triggered by social situations. So some people also call it like agoraphobia. They're similar things. So it's fears of big crowds, or more specific agoraphobia. But in general, there's just social anxiety, which a lot of people in the world suffer it. Social anxiety is quite common, especially in teenagers these days, and due to the rise of social media and things like that, verbal communication is actually less necessary. So there are a lot of ways to get around having social anxiety, such as talking over phone, talking over text. Sometimes it's also known as social phobia.
So another form of anxiety is a panic disorder. This is where you have intense or sudden panic attacks, and they also often fluctuate in strength, and you get more intense feelings than others, and more intense than other types of anxiety disorders. The feelings of this like sort of terror may start suddenly and very unexpectedly. You can't see them coming, you can't predict them, and they often come from a sort of trigger, which can be a past experience or something you've just happened to come across in your life. Panic attacks can resemble heart attacks. They can feel like your heart is like beating rapidly, and many people think they're something they're not and don't know what they're having, and it also leads to this like intense fear.
How many people here have panic attacks or have had a panic attack before?
I've had one.
So
wow, I'm the only one who hasn't.
4 out of 5.
I haven't. Look at me.
Have you had it? Okay, 4 out of 5 people here have had panic attacks, and I think that speaks to
That we've recognised.
Yeah, that we've recognised. They're actually ridiculously common, even for people who do not suffer from anxiety. So if anyone wants to talk about their experience with panic attacks.
So obviously some people don't have panic attacks, they just piss themselves instead, but that's to each their own.
I mean, mine came after an incredibly traumatic event. So
You don't have to talk about it.
yeah.
That's fine. Do you want to share?
Not really.
Okay. So I'll talk about how I have panic attacks. My panic attacks fluctuate in frequency. They go from anywhere from like having like 2 or 3 a day to having 1 a week. It really depends. when they happen, I like classify them in different ways. So they're either things where I stop breathing for a bit and I can pass out on occasions. Other times it's just my entire world kind of just shuts down, and they're really stressful things to happen. And a lot of the time people always think, oh, you just need to think of ways to deal with it. But in a lot of cases, it's really hard, and you are in a headspace at that moment when nothing is gonna really be able to help you. And it's mostly prevention methods that are the most important for people who have panic attacks, because that's the best way to regulate them.
So this is about anxiety and phobias. When a child does not outgrow the fears and worries that are typical in young children, or when there are so many fears and worries that they interfere with school, home, or even play activities, the child may be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Examples of different types of anxiety disorders include being very afraid when away from parents, which is called separation anxiety, having extreme fear about a specific thing or situation such as a dog, insect, or going to the doctor, so phobias, being very worried about the future and being bad things happening, which is just general anxiety, having repeated episodes of sudden, unexpected, intense fear that comes with symptoms like heart pounding, having trouble breathing, or feeling dizzy, shaky, or sweaty, which is a panic disorder.
So, for a lot of these, they're quite commonly experienced. However, there always have been a stigma around things like panic disorders and anxiety disorders, because people often say things like grow up, or there's nothing to be scared about, or just stop putting yourself in those situations. But in a lot of times, they are things that are like inherently human. And obviously a lot of stress is caused by high levels of cortisol in your body, which is a stress hormone. And this is something that's very dangerous. And mindsets where you're saying that people should just stop being scared are incredibly toxic and can create so much damage to so many people who will put themselves in situations where they are not comfortable and push themselves too far in a lot of cases. Next, we're going to talk about depression and how depression affects different types of people.
Okay, so mild depression, which is 70% of people who have depression, it just makes you feel low and as though everything's harder than it should be. It makes life seem like every day when you wake up it's gonna be a challenge, whereas if you on a good day you don't necessarily have good days when you wake up. It's just every day there's a low mental attitude, whereas severe depression, which is only 10% of the people that have depression, diagnosed depression, can lead to the hopeless feeling like you're trapped, and in many cases can lead to suicide or something, because you feel like life is too challenging to go on. This is too hard every day when you wake up, and yeah.
So with depression, we've obviously now talked about different types of depression, but things that some people need to understand is just because you have been labelled as having mild depression doesn't mean your struggle is any less valid than someone who may have the label of severe depression. And in the interview, we obviously talked about self-diagnosis, and depression is one of the most commonly self-diagnosed things. And in a lot of cases, self-diagnosis is the first step to being diagnosed. So for depression, you may not want to use the term depressed to describe yourself, because depression is its own diagnosis, whereas the word depressed is just talking about feeling intense negativity or emptiness for a specific amount of time.
So now we're going to move on to some statistics that we found about depression. So 5% of adults suffer from depression, and it's the leading cause of disability worldwide. 3.8%.
3 to 8% of the population are affected by
depression, and 5 to 7% among adults over 60 are depressed. So
Did you see that?
approximately 280 million people suffer worldwide, and only 19% get diagnosed. And 70% of depression diagnoses are mild, 20% are moderate, and only 10% are severe.
90% of young children recover within the first year. During COVID, the numbers increased from 19% to 21% in early 2021. So that's the statistics on depression. So depression is one of the more common kind of diagnoses and more commonly talked about things within the discussion of mental health, yet it's still something that holds so much stigma and so much misinformation being spread about it non-stop. People are always saying, oh, just be happy, like you control your own emotions, just if you pretend that you're happy, then you're not. However, well, depression is caused by an imbalance of hormones and chemicals in your brain and wherever else your hormones are, so your blood, I guess.
Because we're running low on serotonin.
We are running low on serotonin. So, things that can people...
Cue the song. I'm running low on serotonin. Chemical imbalance coming.
We're keeping that in.
So that's the song.
You're not keeping that in. Actually, we can.
If you want to listen to
You
the
are
song,
welcome.
Summer Depression by Girl in Red. That's
No, it's called Serotonin by Girl in Red.
That's another song that we can listen to.
Just listen to Girl in Red.
So the first place you need to look is the NHS website. Then we have the Young Minds UK, who also have sources on their websites. We have Childline, if you want to talk to anyone. And the number is, now say it with me, 0800 111.
There's also Cooth, which is completely anonymous.
And it's an online thing. Your school may have recommended it to you. So I'm just about to say something a little bit triggering. So if you suffer with things that cause you to self-harm, there are various apps that you can use. So there's one called Calm Harm, where that's quite helpful. Or people use the I Am Sober app to record how long they stay clean. And it's a really good way to set goals that you are trying to achieve. Woo!
Woo!
Okay.
So now we're going to be talking about a very triggering and heavily stigmatized topic. So if you do not want to hear about eating disorders, please do move on to the next episode or segment depending on where you're watching. So I feel
with eating disorders, there's a very commonly talked about issue. However, there's a lot of stigma and misinformation spread around it. Most people only are aware of things like restrictive eating disorders, which aren't 100% are not the only kind. Lots of eating disorders either mix different kind of symptoms or only focus on one kind of thing. Less talked about eating disorders are things like binge eating disorder, bulimia, and eating disorders not otherwise specified, which are commonly diagnosed by the NHS and other medical staff. So now we're going to talk about the kinds of eating disorders and how they're classified under the NHS. So in a lot of countries and in a lot of places, eating disorders have very strange definitions and like specifics that people must almost achieve in order to be considered a specific eating disorder. For some people, if you are anorexic, you must be under a specific weight category in order to be classified as such. And if not, you would be classified as having eating disorders not otherwise specified, or EDNOS. Many of the other eating disorders have similar kind of targets involved, even binge eating disorder and bulimia. Most people who mix and match their eating disorders, for lack of a better term, would also be classified as having eating disorders not otherwise specified. In the current medical field, this is a very toxic thing that should be gotten rid of, I assume, that in order to be diagnosed as something, you must have reached a specific weight class, because that's just setting a target for people who are already not in a positive place. And this is a really unhealthy way to kind of have this system, as it is just perpetuating very harmful negative stereotypes that only a very specific type of person can be diagnosed with various eating disorders.
I think what we'll do now, we'll list some charities you can go to and you can talk to who may be able to give you further help, because we're not professionals and we do not want to be giving you false information. So as I said last time, Young Minds, Childline, 0800 1111. You have Samaritans.
If you are feeling or having any issues to do with these topics, please speak to either your local GP or a trusted adult who can get you the best help that you can. I know it's very hard for a lot of people, especially people who suffer from eating disorders, to get help, because you may have heard multiple horror stories online, or even just the idea of getting help in these situations can be very scary. But it is what the best option is, and everyone who knows you would love you to be able to recover and get the help that you need.
So now we're going to be talking about personality disorders. The definition of a personality disorder is a condition that affects how you think, feel, behave, or relate to other people. There are 10 different types of personality disorders, and they are grouped into 3 categories: suspicious, emotional, and impulsive. It's a very controversial diagnosis because our understanding of what it means to experience personality disorders is constantly evolving.
So just to repeat, the 3 different types of categories are suspicious, emotional and impulsive, and anxious. Personality disorders are often caused by a person going through intense trauma at some point of their life. And this can be, obviously, it's a traumatic experience, and it can cause a variety of different shifts in someone's brain. The problem is these kind of personality disorders often end in unstable relationships and behaviors within people because of intrusive thoughts and impulsive decision making and things connected to those, which can end in a lot of various issues for the person who has the personality disorder and the people who interact with the person for the personality disorder.
So, treatment for personality disorders, often the most common way is therapy. This is simply where you talk to a therapist or someone you'll feel comfortable with that can help you through to solve what's causing this deeper issue.
Your thoughts, feelings, and behaviours.
However, in a lot of cases, treatment for personality disorders stops quite early, as they are very hard things to work through, and the most common method of treatment involves, instead of trying to solve the issue, trying to solve the behaviours caused and the patterns caused by having a personality disorder, as you will never be able to erase the trauma that the person went through, only aid in their behaviours post the experience.
But treatment for a personality disorder it's incredibly specific to each individual person. It's not something you can go by with other mental disorders. It's not something you can just, oh, this is how you solve this. It's very, very, because everyone has a unique trigger or a unique personality that they can switch to, and treatment can end very quickly, but it can also last months to years or however long it takes.
It's not clear what causes personality disorders. It could just be genes or a stressful childhood experience.
Another thing about personality disorders is that often in combination with various other mental illnesses, which can make the experience for someone who has a personality disorder even worse. In many cases, it's in conjunction with a different anxiety disorder or depression or various other neurodivergencies.
Woo! Bipolar disorder and antisocial personality disorder are the two most frequently diagnosed ones. And once again, we will link down below different websites and stuff which will have more reliable information than anything we are telling you right now.
Thank you.
So, now we're going to begin our reflection section.
Reflection section! Okay.
So, we've just come out of our interview with Nikki.
Yeah. That actually, to be honest,
all the questions we asked were very kind of specific.
And yeah, they, most of the time, these are kind of common questions that you'd see people asking around on the internet. And they always give the same kind of answer, which is like, yeah, phone's bad, mental health, bad.
Social media,
bad. But like
Life,
Nikki's
bad.
she gives it, she put it constructively.
Yeah, Nikki's answers didn't feel like all hope was
It
lost.
didn't feel forced.
Yeah, they felt like she felt like someone I would feel comfortable talking to about actual issues.
Which is what you want from a GP.
Yeah, like a lot of the time, a lot of people, especially young people like around our age, are too scared to get help because they know and they have a feeling that everything's just gonna get blamed on them. And Nikki's whole outlook came across like it was very much support orientated, and that's something that's so interesting because it's so important for us to be helping each other as a community and making sure that your friends, your family, or just the people you choose to spend your life around are okay, because then they can do the same for you. And that she made it seem like that's not a selfish requirement, because so many people these days think that asking people for help or people asking you for help is selfish. But yes, you have every right to say no and set boundaries, but it's not a selfish thing to ask unless you're doing it in an unhealthy way. And I think it's very important to make that clarification. But it's also very important to be able to feel comfortable and be able to feel like you can ask for help and get help, because you aren't alone when you're suffering. Because, like, people have their own experiences. No one's two experiences are the same. So knowing that, you know that you're not alone, because just because you haven't experienced what someone else has doesn't mean that they're not there for you.
Thank you for listening to episode number 2 of our podcast. In the caption of this, you will be able to find our other social medias. So please give us a follow, and we hope to see you again soon.